Cup of Ray. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cup of Ray. Brought to you here again from inside the Kennedy compound because we got some special things set up for today. Got a special guest going to be on here. Actually, he's my DJ. He's my boy in the box. He's going to be helping me, assisting me here. Mr. Blake Anthony will be joining me here in a moment from Sports Talk 49 Studios. Of course, those of you who watch Blake Anthony's show during the week, you know who Blake is. Also, Blake actually had an article, writes articles for the Bucs Report, and he had one published today. So, give me a second here, guys. Blake, can you go ahead, bring us in? We in two-shot?
Yep, we're in two-shot.
Good. Give me a second here, Blake. Go ahead and introduce yourself. I'm having power issues here. I want to make sure I get this straight.
Yep, this is Blake.
Put me in the lobby for just a second.
Yep, this is Blake Anthony with Sports Talk 49 here on Cup of Ray. Having a good morning. Got my cup. It's just not of Ray. It's of coffee, of course. And we're going to talk about, Ray's going to talk about a bunch of interesting stuff today, and I'm just going to chime in right with him. So hopefully you guys enjoy today's Cup of Ray. It's a little different than, Sports Talk 49 and the sports web, but Ray's going to bring it 110%. Ray, you good now?
Hey, Blake, I'm back. Yeah, we'll see if that power thing pops up. I think I got a loose cord here. But, I was mentioning there at the very top of the show, and again, I want to mention to everybody out there, all of our usual followers here on Cup of Ray, thank you for joining me, and Blake once again joining me today. But we have the ability today to take your questions and comments because Mr. Blake's going to have it on that end. So anything we're talking about as the show goes on, if you have any questions or anything you want to talk about, as always, bring it, guys. We love the comments. But Blake, funny thing is with the report this week, again, the Bucs being seen, the ABC News 10 helicopter over top of the high school field over there they're training at and getting a little bit, they're all basically just standing around. You can kind of see, the guys walking and talking a little bit, maybe positional formations or running routes. But Ryan Jensen was there, which of course is such a great thing, the center to quarterback exchange. Some people dismiss that sometimes, but the specific way quarterbacks like it, you're going to be in different conditions, wet conditions, windy, the ball's going to be slippery, or maybe a little I'm just kidding, not deflated. But to have Ryan Jensen there also, he's the quarterback of that offensive line. So even though you and I talked about this, they're not actually running against the defense and actually doing live plays. We know how important that is. So I saw an article you published this morning on the Bucs Report. And basically the title was, go ahead. What was the title again, Blake?
Oh, Ryan Jensen centered out. Yeah,
right. And I thought, okay, Ryan was at the workouts this week, and I think you said he grounded out, right? Ryan Jensen grounded out. And the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, brought him back to earth. Ryan Jensen, we know he loves to barbecue. We always see his posts on Twitter and such that man loves to cook. Gosh, would I like to get invited to one of those dinners? But basically, in this case, the grounded out had meant something else entirely. And why don't you go ahead and share that story with our viewers?
Well, Ryan posted on Twitter. All information was on his Twitter page. If you go to Ryan Jensen's Twitter, maybe just put Ryan Jensen under Twitter. He said he drives a Tesla. I don't know if anybody knows what he drives a Tesla, and how active Jensen is on social media with his photography, and of course, like Ray said, his barbecue. Big guys got to eat. I mean, he's legit, man. He puts his gloves on and everything, and does his cooking. He's legit. But unfortunately, in the area he lives, somebody had came there and switched the ground and the hot wire in his charging station near his house, and he knows when it was installed correctly. And he talked to the installer, and he said somebody had switched the cables, and when Ryan had went to the vehicle and put his hand on it, it shocked him, and the battery was overcharging at 120%, which is not supposed to be at. It's that dangerous level. And luckily he was able to catch on to that and see that the wires were switched. And as he said, used a few choice words in there, which I think anybody would, because it was scary that he could have gotten injured from that if he had not noticed that, or something would have happened, anything, a fire catch on, or whatever scenario would have happened. Was fortunate that he caught on, and it's very sad that somebody had the time to do that to somebody while he's at work or wherever he was at the time when somebody switched that. But it was a good thing that he noticed it And I hope nobody else where he lives at had to experience that.
Well, and when you told me that story yesterday, right? And you told, and that's one of the great things, us Bucs Report employees, writers, talent, people that do live shows. We talk a lot, and you had told me about that before you published this morning. And and you remember, what was the first thing we said? Even though it was tongue in cheek, we said that we thought it was a what?
It was a Saints fan.
Saints fan.
And I believe
it might have been Jameis one of one.
Oh my Lord! I think he's got beef with Jensen. I think Jensen doesn't get any of the Jameis one of one smoke. But yeah. So somebody said in the comments too. The first comment was actually, I didn't know Sean Payton was still doing Bounty Gate. I was like, oh my God! He kind of got a chuckle at it. And then of course the next thing is like, damn Saints fans. I was like, oh Lord. I was like, I hope it's not going to that extreme, trying to injure people over a football game. But even myself, when you watch games, as a fan, you don't really want to see somebody get hurt, even as a rival team, it's not that serious to me. It's just a game. It's for entertainment. I don't want anybody to seriously get injured.
I'll add a little bit of, let's add a layer of suspicion there. Okay. I think it's week 4. Yeah, week 4, we play at home here against Justin Herbert, that rookie quarterback, and those Los Angeles Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one for you. There's another, maybe they should be asking so those guys were. But here's the funny thing about Ryan Jensen, because as you mentioned, and as I mentioned opening up, is that he loves to post all the barbecue photos, and boy does take it seriously. He's got all the gear, he got the grill, but I never thought in my lifetime I'd ever hear myself say this sentence. But man, would I love to get my hands on Ryan Jensen's brisket. I'm just kidding. But that brisket looked good, all right?
His food, is real appetizing.
Oh, it does look good, but I don't want to touch his brisket. But moving on to other things, I saw today. There's so many things going on with the NFL season, and one of the things I saw last night was over in New Zealand. They actually had a rugby. They brought rugby back, and there were 20,000 fans in the stands. And all players on the field, and there wasn't a mask in sight as far as for the COVID-19. My first thought is, come on, guys, some this, some that, who's wrong? But they said that there has not been a new case of coronavirus in New Zealand in over 3 weeks now. I don't think that means that it's completely out there, but we're also wondering, what's these NFL team going to look like? What's the NBA going to look like with no fans in attendance over at the Wide World of Disney, Pixar studio complex? But to see those fans in New Zealand, and it's cold in New Zealand, right? Right now they're in the middle of they're in their winter.
Mm-hmm.
Got to their winter, the Earth made its shift, and you can see their breath. So it's going to be cold flu season. They're going to continue playing rugby. Maybe that's one of the places. I hope that the professional sports have people over there watching these things to kind of say, okay, what are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? How can we learn from this? Because this week, of course, that the story was with Arians. In a comment, he mentioned the thought of keeping a third quarterback in quarantine. Now, let me ask you, Blake, of the 3 on the list, you got of John. Not even talking about Reed Sinnett, but of Ryan Griffin, Blaine Gabbert, and of course Tom Brady. Which of those 3 would you put into a quarantine situation, or is there maybe a quarterback out there that you think would serve the Bucs well in that type of role?
I think Arians has made it clear that he really wants Blaine Gabbert as the veteran, another veteran backup. So I believe if Ryan Jensen makes the roster, Ryan Griffin makes the roster, it will be him probably going into quarantine. But who knows? I said Arians could go with somebody else. But I think it would probably have to be Ryan Griffin with the situation as it is. Quarantine, not having a whole lot of time to pick up new people to learn the system and continuity. I think it would have to still be Ryan Griffin being the one going into quarantine to stay back just in case something happens. Only because he's familiar here and with the whole pandemic thing going on. So he's already familiar with the system. He wouldn't have to learn so much in a short period of time, just in my opinion.
Right. And Gabbert, having played for Bruce Arians in Arizona with the Cardinals, and now having his second year now in the new Bruce Arians Buccaneer-style offense under Byron Leftwich as the OC, definitely the veteran. Of course, Ryan Griffin, he's been on the team for 17 and a half years, and he's thrown one pass, but I mean, they've seen enough of this kid, and of course, Sean Payton and those Saints saw enough of him when they took him as a free agent right out of college, and of course, he was put on waivers. Then he comes to the Bucs. So yeah, he makes the best case. Now, I don't know how teams are going to be affected by roster sizes this year and such. And I'm not just saying this for argument's sake, because probably there's 31 other teams that have radio or indoor shows like ours, not the Revolution like ours, but Revolution of Sports that we have here on the Bucs Report and Sports Web. Wouldn't, as crazy as it sounds, wouldn't a veteran like a Colin Kaepernick, if he was to agree to a deal where he could be the quarantine quarterback, still be in the room and come for the right price, as if he's interested in still playing, the way he was known more for his running than his passing. He bossed out there in Frisco, and of course he loses his starting job to injury to that Mr. Blaine Gabbert now, who's with the Bucs. But that's something that just at first it intrigued me. The thought of, okay, we had a Colin Kaepernick or a Cam Newton or somebody who it's obvious you're not going to get a starting role and nobody's going to pay you too big of money for a second string. It's a good chance that this team in Tampa Bay makes a run for that championship in 2020. Would they be interested in being a part of that, even if it's in some type of a quarantine? And of course, it'd be so hard for them to learn the offense for limited mini camps they're going to have in preseason. It's just one of the thoughts I had. What are your thoughts on that?
On Colin Kaepernick? It's a possibility.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a possibility for any team to pick him up. Question would be is what does Colin want to play for? How much does he want to play for? Is he really going to try to accept the backup role, or he's going to really try to look for a starting gig? It's really up to him and his camp what they really want. I mean, I know everybody wants, to say, can he sign Kaepernick, but Kaepernick's going to want to, he's going to have to want to choose who he wants to play for or for what price. Knowing after all this, after this George Floyd issues and all that, Kaepernick names now resurfacing, and Roger Goodell making the apology, which I think he should have mentioned the man's name in his apology. But it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. I know there's been rumors of Seattle. Don't know how true that is. Don't know who. There's probably a bunch of teams that's probably reached out to his agent, but you usually don't hear about a lot of them. I know people are going to ask questions. So it's interesting to see, Ray. If you're asking me, is it a possibility? Absolutely. But like you said previously, it's really going to depend on timing to learn the system, timing to get continuity with the team, especially with this pandemic, and what the rules are with how many players, how many players can you have to do this? And I know Baltimore Ravens Harbaugh reached out and said he thought the parameters of what the league put out was impossible. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think the NBA is going to be a real catalyst for how teams are going to format everything and seeing how that goes.
And the thing is, for me, for Colin Kaepernick, again, it depends on exactly how much he wants to play. What's that 2019 confidential settlement he had with the NFL? What does that entail? Is there some type of a rule, not such a rule that says you can never come back, but are there specific requirements? And not to put Colin to the back of the line or to put him back in the shadows, because, by the way, the Buccaneers have an exclusive rights contract with Nike, and we know that Colin and Nike are pretty. We saw that commercial Colin ran during last football season, just a phenomenal 90-second commercial. But to be able to, because, basically, where is Colin Kaepernick? And not that he's supposed to be out here now leading these charges. No, I mean, he did his thing. He made his statement, and he changed what now looks like is going to change. He's changed the structure of the NFL and the powers on Park Avenue and how they're going to respect players that want to make a statement for any reason, but especially in this case, having been because of social injustice and the fact that there was police brutality. But 32 teams, let's say all 32 teams decide to go to the quarantine quarterback. It's not even the third day non-dressing quarterback, although maybe it is, right? The third quarterback isn't dressed day of the game. But wouldn't it be good for Colin, or a possibility that he could get into on one of the 32 teams in the NFL, get that platform back? He's still going to be doing his interviews. He'll still have his be able to say what he wants to say, but doing it from the quarantine position. So, the NFL bowed 2 years ago when everybody cried foul about kneeling at the national anthem. And of course, they're starting to understand today. There's some people that still don't understand. It was not about a lack of respect for the flag. It was about a statement about a lack of respect that was not being given elsewhere, part of the American dream. But so many people, the NFL bowed to that really quickly and said, this is not going to happen. And they're going to play like Colin, who, for the last 4 years, every year. I mean, now literally it's become a, we do it after the fact, that there's been at least 20 teams that would have gained greatly from having a player like Colin Kaepernick on their team, even if he's running like an RPO or utilizing his strength of his arm. His 1 year with Harbaugh's coaching in Frisco, he bought and took him to the Super Bowl. I mean, he showed he had the hit factor. So, maybe there's a team out there there's some teams out there that I would argue could use Colin as a backup quarterback. There might even be one or two that could probably use a quality or a gifted player like Colin as a starting quarterback. But, maybe we take baby steps there. But I'd like to see him get back on the horse and be in an NFL camp somewhere, even if it is as that third quarantine quarterback. So he's getting back in shape, learning the skill, but then still being able to say what he needs to say and to continue to keep the cause going that has started so full this offseason. So actually, I wanted to ask you something. So, that says NFL season. They're looking at, they're going to shorten those preseason games, right? Possibly take them down to 2, which before last year's the CBA got agreed to earlier this offseason. They got the 7th team added to each conference, so we've got that extra playoff team. But they've been trying for years to take away 2 preseason games, but then add those 2 games to a 17th and 18th regular season game, which NFL fans all agree, more of that is better. And as an insult, always was an insult every year, paying my season tickets. And I was paying, at the time, it was $150 a seat. We had 2 seats, $300 a game. You go through the schedule, but you still had to pay $200 a game for those 2 preseason games, which were usually a Thursday night or a Saturday night. And it was insult. It was insulting. And it was like, why cannot they prorate this? Or why do they not have this? So when I'm talking now about the fact with COVID-19 and shortening that preseason down and being more emphasized on skill and getting in shape and stuff like that, I'm all on board. We're not even talking about adding the 17th and 18th game this year. I'm all on board for that. But how do you think those 2 preseason games are going to possibly affect these teams?
Yeah, it's definitely going to affect playing against other bodies than yourself. I believe they said there will be no joint practices. So losing those 2 games is going to be key, because joint practices actually help against preseason games. Without having those, it's going to take more time away for undrafted players and guys just picked up off the streets to have a chance to get on the team. I think it's going to affect it in that aspect. I don't expect a whole lot of starters to play in these 2 preseason games. I know they're going to get out there and get their feet wet, but a lot of the work is going to be done for them. It's going to be an actual camp and not against opponents. But in the long run, I know a lot of people don't like preseason. They say they call it meaningless football. I mean, no football is really meaningless, especially when it comes to try to implementing plays and learning continuity and signal calls and things like that. It helps for somebody trying to get the speed of the game and catch on to what everything's going on in the league. And as Devin White once said too, he didn't catch on too early at the beginning of the season, but he did catch on at the end. The speed is different. So it's going to be interesting. I know a lot of people are happy with getting rid of 2 of the preseason games. I never had a problem with it because I know the importance of playing against other bodies besides your own teammates. So we'll see how it goes. But as far as tickets go, they're going to have to prorate something. Instead of paying for all 4 of those preseason games, now you're going to pay for 2. They'll probably just put those on the back end of whatever you're playing or add it to your next season or whatever. I'm sure they'll figure out a way, just like any business does, complimenting their customers with their payments on stuff. So it's different. I'm glad the league is trying new things and trying to figure out better ways to run the league. There's nothing wrong with change and trying to find what works and what don't work. So I'm just happy that the league is just trying new things and making the league go in another direction.
Right. Yeah. And I think the players, obviously the people that are affected the most, and, the way I could get pumped up, because I going back to 76, 77, all the way up, I always get pumped up. We were going, when Peter Blake and I were heading over to the camps over at the Advent Health Facility, but I'm always going to call it $1. Just getting across that bridge, and especially we were rolling and talking Bucs. I could always justify the season games by saying, well, there's a player out here on special teams, or there's a DB, or there's a tight end or a receiver who's probably right on the bubble. Literally, has to show out special teams, or it's a number game wide receiver, and you'd see a young player, and then as the cuts would be made, and we go from 273 down to 95 down to 70, then the final 53 man roster. Some of those players would get transitioned over to the practice squad, so we knew we still had them in there. But that doesn't mean the rules of the practice squad is if you have a player on a practice squad, another team in the league is going to put them right on their active roster. They can come pick them. I mean, that's the same for all 32 teams. So I think the younger players that rely on that, like you said, the speed is so different. It's live. The bullets are real. They rely on that video to make statements and to take on to other teams. We've seen it in the last couple of years with all of our camp with the Raiders, or a few years back, camp with the Bucs, and see those players go in and talk coach, and Annie in the playbook, the Turk comes and gets them. I always thought Turk Schoner was the Bucs Turk, because he was quarterbacks coach like 150 years ago. He was with Sam Weiss when he was there. His name happened to be Turk. He may have been Turk for the offensive players, but my point being is that I have no idea what my point was. But no, the loss of the 2 preseason games, I think, doesn't really. Because I do that, brother. And by the way, maybe is there a way you could possibly put the comments? Does it take too much away from the screen to put the comments up there live? I mean, is there a way we can do that? Maybe is there been any comments or any questions? Anybody wanting to test mine?
Here's a couple.
Ben Anderson says, go ahead.
Yeah, Ben Anderson says, I agree. He's more of a running kind of quarterback more than a thrower. Stephen Todd Patterson said, first time in many moons we have had this much hype going into a season, and I love it. Nick Smith says, I think it would be a bad idea in regards to Kaepernick. And that's it for now on comments.
Could be. I mean, it could be. Okay, no, I mean, but everybody feel free if you have a question or comment to make out there. But, you and I had a little conversation last night, and I wasn't too positive one direction. You weren't too negative one direction. But, again, going back to that report this week of the players meeting over there at was it Armwood at the high school they're meeting? I know that the team mascot happens to be the Buccaneers. But we were talking about what does that mean? Because, we've seen it like the last 20 years. First, you'd love your veteran quarterbacks that would get the receivers together. It was a rare story back in the day. And then you'd see your Drew Brees getting a few receivers together, or a couple of, or maybe some would meet down in Aruba on the beach. They're just throwing around, but it's more team building as far as getting to know each other and stuff like that. Now, I posed the question that, don't you think, I mean, other than the fact that, like Cam Brate mentioned in an article we covered in the report a few weeks back, that Cam Brate was talking about the fact that at this point they're teaching Tom Brady the Arians offensive verbiage, and he knows that, as they go into the season, there'll be Brady who's basically deciphering or breaking down what he sees. Now, I say that them meeting over there and running these, you got 8 players. You had like OJ, and you saw Dare Ogunbowale, which last year when he came into the Buccaneers offense on third and short, usually he was the hands out of the backfield. That was one of the things, and I think I burned Jameis one game where the defense and everyone at home knew that Dare came in the game meant that was the case, and I believe it ended in an interception. But I thought that's got a lot. Learning Tom Brady, how he likes to lead his receivers, getting to know him more as a person. I thought that was pretty fantastic. But you made a point, Blake, and I'll let you expound on that, about the fact that it may not be as beneficial as we like to think.
Well, it's not. It's beneficial getting with your players. I think Brate said it. I think Jensen's made jokes about it, and he said it too. That Brate was like, oh, it's weird that I'm teaching a 20-year veteran a new offense, and it's the fact that it's Tom Brady. Brady always giving his honest answer. I've always respected him for that. Young guy at Harvard, made the best of his opportunities. Clearly, been plagued by the injury bug the past 2 seasons, but the first thing I think of is when you come out there and you're playing on an offense, it's learning the verbiage. And I'll speak from my own experiences. When you try to learn as much as you can and taking in everything. You got to learn the way he throws the ball, the way he wants to throw the ball, where he wants you to sit, and things like that. It's not as complex as people think. That like, oh, he wants you to sit here like that. And like we were talking, Rays, because you don't have any defenders behind you. You're not reading coverages. You don't know that the safety's down in the box to cover the back out of the backfield or the tight end, those type of things, because those would implement why you're running a route a certain way, or where he wants you to stop short on certain things. I mean, you can kind of guess where somebody's going to be, but it's not the same as in game, because of course the defense is running schemes on yourself, on your offense, as well as you're running an offense against their defense. And those are in-game things that Brady's going to communicate. That's where Brady's at his strength. Okay, I can see what they're doing right here, blah, 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 XYZ. You make your hand gestures, and you guys know where you're going to be at. And that's where the importance of what you're doing now comes into what you're going to do later, is where you're going to run your routes, how he wants you to run that dig route, how he wants you to run the in, how he wants you to run a stop route. Are you going to get up the numbers and get outside? And the other part of it, which Scotty Miller was really bad at, was not understanding the importance of running his route. Scotty Miller ran a lot of bad routes that led to interceptions. Granted, Jameis didn't help himself with a few of those either, but a lot of those because Scotty Miller wasn't running his routes properly to free up other receivers to run routes. You got to take the receiver's eyes off the backfield and other plays like that to not jump routes. And all those are going to be implemented into the way Tom Brady's going to play this offense. And Brady said it himself. He doesn't trust a guy out there. He's not going to throw him the ball, and rightfully so. I don't blame him, because I believe Arians said that about Jameis Winston. He trusts the receivers more than he would. That's saying something. So that's what I think about those practices and how they.
Yeah, it's like when you go from right-handed quarterback to a left-handed quarterback, or we see it rarely in the NFL where there's a left-footed punter and the ball spins differently. So I mean, it literally for a running back or for a receiver, when that right-handed quarterback's throwing it, it spins this way, but the left-handed quarterback, it spins that way. That takes some adjusting. So, but I do believe that probably with these 8 guys, the NFL or the state of Florida mandates you're not able to meet in groups of 10 or larger, which, 10 or larger, that you can do a practice with Tom Brady and his nine tight ends. I kid. But I mean, I actually think that even though learning, and they said that at one point, SI.com was the one I read the story out of, although I covered that out of our Bucs report first, but they said that at one point it looked like Tom Brady was actually walking down and walking out with Mike Evans and showing him, probably like you said, that they were showing him why, if a DB's here and there, which they kind of already know. If DB's outside, you're going in. If he's inside, you're going out. But, I think that other than learning, the players are going to learn, because it's going to be quick passes. Right? The players are learning that Tom Brady's probably never going to give up on a game, but hopefully he's showing them in real time his ability to check down 1, 2, 3, 4, always looking for that open receiver. And but on that note, I probably think that if after practice, when they all go over to maybe they go over to stands or sit in the stands and grab their towels and maybe crack open a cold can of Miller Lite or something like that, create less filling. But I happen to think that that's also probably the most important part, because they're really getting to know each other, even more so than people can do through Zoom meetings and stuff like that. Even though, you can get to know each other, you can talk verbiage and you can talk things, but just being there and getting the time together, it's forming a cohesiveness. And so from that standpoint, I think it's pretty good. But did you get a chance yourself? I wanted to ask you this. Did you get a chance to see, and you probably did, that Twitter post this week from anyway, there was a Twitter post this week with Ronald Jones II, or Rojo. That Twitter post where Rojo's catching the quick passes, he's catching it, throw it down, throw it down, and then the third one he takes and runs. Did you get a chance to see that?
Yeah, I seen all of those videos up for Rojo. I think a lot of those, what he's doing is pointless. The screen route's not bad. Somebody, like I said, whoever's coaching him out there, there's a lot of easier ways to help simulate the catching the passes out the backfield for Ronald Jones. From what I'm seeing, he's basically just playing catch out there. Granted, I'm not knocking. Don't think I'm just being negative on Rojo. I'm just looking at it like, if I was out there with him, we'd be doing a lot more things that would help him simulate coming around the tackle, trying to catch a pass on an angle route, coming out catching flare passes where there's a defender, like giving him a better simulation of where bodies are going to be at. Granted, it looks like kids out there, people his age, that don't play in the league, and they're trying to do the best that they can. But yeah, I seen that he's trying to catch quick hitch routes as a wide receiver, which is something that Tom Brady's going to do. Flare routes and deep. He's catching deep post routes and stuff like that. He's not going to be running those routes in the offense. Going to be short, little, quick, extended handoffs, I'll call them, extended handoff passes by Tom Brady, and you're going to have to get it over body, but it's going to be thrown over bodies and things like that. So like I said, when I'm looking at those videos, there's a little easier ways to help simulate in-game situations than what I'm seeing out there. From pretty much what I'm seeing, he's just out there playing catch with a bunch of guys.
Right, guys. Well, I said a while back, of course, back in March, early or mid-March, that when everything was shut down and realized there wasn't going to be the OTAs or the live rookie mini camps and such like that, I kind of made a comment, a Facebook post where I said, hopefully the first call from Coach Arians' office when all that went down was get jugs machines to all of our running backs' houses, just to get more habit. But really for Rojo, the passes are nice and hopefully but I said, doesn't he look like the video of him, the latest one? And of course I'm going back to Doug Martin, but I said, it looks like Rojo turned into the muscle hamster minus the hamster part, right? Because he really it looks like he's put on at least maybe good 10, 15 pounds of muscle weight. But really the catches are nice, but for the Buccaneers in 2020, I hope that Rojo has really been working on those blocks, picking up those blocks, because we want to have Rojo's speed in there to hit trap plays or to be able to give him a crease, and this kid can go the distance. But we saw it last year early on, or the year before, if you will. No, it was last year where Coach pulled him out because he missed the block, and of course, not just because Tom Brady's made of china or that frail. The guy's still in great shape, but we need a running back that is going to be able to pick up and make that block on a linebacker that teams are going to try to rush in and try to spy on Tom Brady to keep that. Tom Brady can make those short passes all day, but you and I both know that no risk it, no biscuit philosophy. We're doing the short stuff to go long. We want to get you long. We want to get Chris Godwin long. See, an OJ Howard break out of the tight end spot and go long, or Mike Evans. So they're going to want to do those 5 and 7 step drop passes. And for that to work, we have to have a running back that can be, when that doesn't open, if Tom reads that the open doesn't come on that 5 or 7 step drop, he wants to be able to dump it in a flat and make a positive play out of a negative. But for Rojo, picking up those blocks this year is going to be quite important.
Cool. You've touched on so much, Ray. I'm still trying to figure out which part I want to jump in first. You talking about Ronald Jones yeah, I just said which part I want to jump in first. I know you probably seen it, but I've talked a whole lot, and I'll get that interview up. It's just I'm trying to get more stuff, like understanding from him. I've talked to this guy named Coach Tom Shaw. He was there for four of the Super Bowls with the Patriots. He won 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots. He knows Tom Brady, I think, better than a lot of people. He was there with Tom Brady in this process when Tom Brady was a rookie in 2000, right? 2000, yep. When Tom Brady was a rookie in 2000. So I think he knows Tom Brady more than anybody, even before Tom Brady was Mr. MVP, as Shaw would coach. And the things Shaw told me about the way the offense run, I got something trying to get a hold of Ben Jarvis, Grant Ellis, who could break down something as far as a running back standpoint. For example, when Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis was Cincinnati, when he had the great game. No, it wasn't with Cincinnati. When he was with New England, and he had those great seasons with New England, and he left in free agency and ended up going to Cincinnati. That's right. He went from New England to Cincinnati. And the things that Ben Jarvis said when he ran flare routes to the sideline, Brady had specific ways you wanted to run your routes in certain situations. Like sometimes if you're sidecar right and shotgun, you flare out to the flats. Brady would want you to come up in the B or the A gap and then go out to the flats for a particular reason, because the way the routes are ran and things like that. That's why I said earlier about the way they're running routes out there is not going to exactly implement what's going to happen again, because there's no bodies out there. And if you run in there the way you run through a gap and then you got another receiver coming over, they rub each other. The receiver's other route picks off the defender covering the running back, and it frees up the running back in the space. But it's all about timing. And Ben Jarvis described how important that was in that offense. And then once he went to Cincinnati, different area, different, culture there. They just said, oh, you just run out there in the flats, just get out there. They weren't really implementing specifics in the things. And the things that Tom explained to me, the way Bill Belichick looks at, he looks at players that have high IQ. He looks at things like what your SAT score is coming out of high school, because the thing about New England, they don't look to change at halftime, which something Dirk Cutter didn't do a whole lot about, the horrible times with that man and not changing things at halftime. He's looking for players, much like Tom Brady, and I know Tom Brady is going to come with that same expectation. Intelligent guys that's going to know how to switch a game plan series to series. And Tom's explained to me like that. I'm like, I never thought about it like that, Tom. I always thought about it at halftime. But if they're implementing series to series, it explains why all these years of success. And you need high IQ guys. And I know in New England, it's always about do your job and things like that. And he explained all the way the Patriot way. You want guys for what skill set they're good at, things like that. And I believe Tom Brady is going to get that at a majority of these players. Now back to Rojo and how that incorporates to that. The pass blocking, it all depends on the 300, 500, and 700 series passing, which all that means is 3, 5, and 7-step drops for people who don't understand what that means. That's all that means. Yes, it's going to be pass protection. You're going to have tight ends. Believe Arian said the 12 package set is going to be the base offense, which means it's going to be multiple tight ends on the field. It's probably going to be a lot of running the ball at the beginning of the games or play action passes or whatever that's going to look. And they're going to try to mix a lot of vertical passing into that, which is Arians' offense and going to be part of Brady's offense as well. Rojo is going to have to learn blocking schemes. It's going to be very important. So Keyshawn Vaughn and Raymond Calais and Dario Ngubwala, if he makes the roster, or maybe undrafted player makes it. It's going to be very important to take advantage of any opportunities that they have with Tom Brady and learning as much as they can, because as I previously said, and why I set this up like that is you're going to have to learn things quick. And like I said, Tom Brady's used to making changes in the game series to series. Not at halftime, be like, oh, you're effing up. This half, we'll wait till second half to do it. You don't have time to do that. You're trying to win the game now in every series. You're trying to win the game in every series, and that's a crucial mind thought as well. I was sitting there mind blown listening to Tom Shaw explain these things to me, and I never really thought about it like that. I know you explain winning or trying to score every series, but you're changing every series well depending on the game situation because you know how your opponent is. Never thought about it that in depth, and that's Bill Belichick as well. So I know that's an elongated answer, but it's going to be interesting.
Oh, I got it. And
yeah,
we always see them. We always saw, well, back in the day, it was the Polaroids, right? Because, we had such technology. The eyes in the sky, or the coaches in the sky would take a Polaroid. The Polaroid would then be copied down to the sidelines, a black and white piece of paper. And, they're looking at the way a defense is, at the tendencies of a defense, the way they're playing a route. Or maybe it's the opposite way. They're looking at, how their defense didn't play in an offense. And now, of course, the NFL is very, very, we're very aware of the fact that through Microsoft, the NFL now has the books on the sidelines, if you will, those Microsoft Surface books. So, and I still think they're just showing images. They're not, they can actually draw on and stuff like that, but they're not actually doing video. And that's one thing we get with Tom Brady, and it's a way he's always seemed like, because over the years, Tom Brady, no matter what goes on, and by the way, throw out the NFL Network today. I put it on Facebook last night. It's a beautiful day. I got a lot of work to do, like everyone else probably, but at 1:00 today on the NFL Network is the Tom Brady's 2017 championship season, and that was the last year they won a Super Bowl. But for my money, Tom Brady, and we'll work it back into those players out there at the field. They're working out in Tampa. Again, like you say, no defensive coverage, no pressure, no linemen except for a center and Denson. But I think that Tom Brady's probably able to explain, even if it's half in his verbiage from New England, and then the players are explaining it half in Arians' verbiage now here in Tampa Bay, or Byron Leftwich, who I want to give the credit to. I think the players are going to start learning that, like you said, Tom Brady will switch. He's switching on drive, or maybe even in the middle of a drive, but probably switching drive to drive. They're going to the sidelines and they're like, okay, they're playing. And that's probably what's keeping defensive coordinators in the NFC South up at night, right? They're probably having nightmares because, the Bucs are going to run it. They're going to run it short. They're going to throw short passes. They're going to use the pass to run. And then we've got these huge tight ends and these tall receivers. And then, oh, by the way, cheat up and put 8 in the box, and we're going to get you long. Because even though some people have questioned, and Moore and Moon said it this week, I want to know, let me transition to that. And this is the way, I know you've watched me your Cup of Ray, Blake, but this is the way I transition. My thought process doesn't really travel in a linear line. But Moore and Moon states this week about how arm strength with Tom Brady. And I think he also mentioned Phillips, I think maybe, but he was talking about the arm strength as they've gotten older. And nobody questions the fact that as you get older, you may not be able to, throw the ball 70+ yards. But in the last couple of years, when given time in New England with a team that didn't have anywhere near the talent and tools that he has here in Tampa Bay, I've seen Tom still be able to lay that ball up and throw some nice spirals. How much do you think the arm strength's been affected at this point, or how much will it affect the Buccaneers in the 2020 season?
First, before when I answer that, I'm really tired of hearing that. Because if Tom Brady was in New England right now, they wouldn't be having this discussion. They wouldn't be questioning his arm strength. They wouldn't be saying anything. Let me first and foremost say that. Now that he's in Tampa Bay, all these things are deciding factors. Okay, now with that said, let me go into what Warren Moon says about arm strength. I think I've made it clear. I showed it on the previous Sports Talk 49 about Tom Brady's arm strength from week 3 to the playoff game. Never withered, never changed. Week 3 was the game when you still had Josh Gordon, when you had a deep threat receiver and Dorsett, and he destroyed the Pittsburgh Steelers. He destroyed the Pittsburgh Steelers so bad throwing deep that they had to go get Minkah Fitzpatrick in the trade. So I'll start with that on arm strength. If you don't remember, if you're on your phone watching this, Steelers versus New England, week 3, I believe it's week 3, destroys the Pittsburgh Steelers deep. And if you watch the Titans game, he throws the Hail Mary pass. He throws several deep passes, even scrambles in the pocket. I think that's Titans game. Well, I ain't going to call it scramble. I guess evasive. He was very evasive in the pocket because Tom Brady ain't scrambling nowhere. Evasive in the pocket and still can get the ball deep. So I did those scales on purpose at the beginning of the season to the very end of the season, and the arm strength never changed. So it's not going to play that much. I watched Chad Pennington not be able to throw a pass further than 30 yards downfield when he hurt his shoulder and I believe finished his career in New York Jets, I believe, or was it Miami? One of the two. No, it was with the Jets and then went to Miami, I believe it was. When he hurt his arm, he couldn't throw over 30 yards, and he was still able to complete passes. But over time, people game plan for that, and they played up close and forced him to make tighter throws. But if you're able to get the ball out and find mismatches and make the receiver, all your job is as a quarterback is to be a facilitator pretty much. There are going to be games where you're going to have to win games? Absolutely. When things get tight and people are going to lean on you to make gut-wrenching decisions and clear thoughts when everything's falling around you, yes, you're going to rely on your quarterback to do that from time to time. And those are the guys that are elite, and those are the guys that aren't. But your job as a quarterback is to find the open guy, get it to him as fast as you can, and let him use his young legs and run and get the first down and a touchdown, and you celebrate slapping hands in the end zone later. That is your job as a quarterback, to move the chains. And of course, that is your job. And every play that everybody, I don't know why everybody gets just so focused on throwing the ball 40, 50 yards. It's not going to happen. Just look in the games. All right, if you don't even believe what I'm saying, just look in the games and look how many times the ball is actually thrown deep. Maybe 5 times at the most. Maybe. Not even that. It's just not thrown that many times deep. Are there games that it happens? Absolutely. You take your shots when you get opportunities. You take your shots when you get one-on-one. You take your shots when there's no safety over there. Yeah, but that just bombing the play. Everybody's so focused on throwing the ball vertically 40, 50 yards downfield. I know Arians is a vertical offense, but you can be a vertical offense without having to throw 40, 50 yards every time. You just pretty much taking advantage of what the defense is giving you. And that's what's going to be in this offense with Tom Brady. I don't believe Mike Evans. I think it's going to be the first year Mike Evans is going to get 1,000 yards. And it's not because Mike Evans' ability to play. I think Mike Evans doesn't give a damn that he doesn't get 1,000 yards. I think Mike Evans has made it clear on his IG. Damn, bro, I played in this league 5 years and never made the playoffs. Do you think he cares about 1,000 yards receiving or winning and going to the playoffs? Ding, ding, ding. I think he's going to want to win and go to the playoffs.
I tell you what, though, I want to see. I think the type of offense they're going to run. Again, we'll work it back to Tom Brady bringing in here Bruce Arians. I want to look, and by the way, everyone out there, for all the people here who probably catch Cup of Ray here on Sunday mornings, I love you all. Thanks for tuning in. But Blake Anthony is our film breakdown guy, right? So at the Bucs Report, we're fortunate to have. We have Nick Citro, our draft guru. He's our Mel Kiper of the Bucs Report. We have Peter Blake, the monster on the mic, 3 nights a week from the Sports Web. We have Joshua Allen Cole, who just happens to be the best doing interviews, some of the best interviews he's gotten. We have now Mr. Alex Fleming, who you guys probably caught yesterday on Turf Talk. It's going to be a brand new show on Saturday. I hope he keeps that going. Always love to hear what Alex brings. But I want to tell him out there that every live we go to, every time we show up for our live and we start, Peter and I and you, we'll start breaking the equipment out, setting up our shot. Peter and I are bouncing questions off of you, Blake, because you are the person, you are our film breakdown specialist. And that's why I love when I'm able to talk with you about some of these things and some of the things you're able to bring to the table. It's exactly because you do that breakdown and you pop off screen at any given notice. So I'm just messing with you. But yeah, I know you hear me. But I mean, that's your specialty. So everyone out there, just again, thanks for being on here today, Blake. And I love the breakdown. Now, let me ask you this question as far as the yak. Are you like me? Do you know? I mean, because, yak is so funny. We use that term, and Peter Blake will be yak. And, you think of a yak, you think of a man walking up the side of the Himalayan mountains. But
right.
do you think 2020, the Buccaneers reset? I mean, maybe they lead. I think they may even lead the league in yak. And what do you think about the possibility of that? The yards after catch with Tom Brady and the way he likes to find the check down or the relief valve receiver as they catch it. I think they lead the league in yak. What do you think?
I believe so. I mean, yeah, yards after catch is very important. Something the Buccaneers never had a whole lot of. Last year was big, and a lot of the yak came from Chris Godwin just being a monster, breaking the first tackle. And a lot of them yak you got to beat the first guy. I think a lot of players are going to look at Chris Godwin a little bit different next year, trying to arm tackle him running, because he's not going to go down by a little wimpy arm tackle getting tripped up. Which, I mean, God bless Mike Evans, but he falls down sometimes on the most wimpiest tackles, I guess because his leg strength isn't that strong. He's not really known for yards after catch. But I've said it before.
I think that's why. I think that's why. Oh, no, I'm going to say I think that's why, like you said, with Mike Evans being under 1,000 yards for the first time possible this season, is because he's the guy. He's a power forward. He's the guy that, wherever you got him on the left or right side, he's doing a 15 out or a 15 stop or behind a back shoulder route. He's the guy that's going to use his strength, go up and get it at the height of the ball, if you will. There's not a DB in the NFC or maybe in the NFL that can cover him tight enough that can go above him. And that's why the fact the Buccaneers have success with the yak or yards after catch this season, I think that they won't, Tom Brady will still have those set plays to go to Mike Evans, Pro Bowl wide receiver. But because Mike Evans, by his very nature, is not so much a yards after catch receiver, he's going to be more of a specific route for Mike. If it's there, great. If not, Brady checks it down to Rojo out backfield or Scotty Miller or Cam Brate running across the tight. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah, Evans is going to be kind of the outside of the guy's number. As I broke down on tape before, I called the Patriots offense the Golden State Warriors, because the inside receivers, there's going to be a guy that's going to be like the pick man that frees up one of the guys coming across and things like that, coming across on a drag. And then Brady's offense, I know they're going to try to work with it as well as Arians' offense. He likes speedier guys in the slots coming on those drag routes, breaking open outside the hashes or just before the hashes, catching passes. And that's what it's going to look like in his offense. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of Evans on the outside coming across on drag routes. You're going to see him, like you said before, you're going to see him on stops. You're going to see him on comebacks. You're going to see him on vertical passes and things like that, trying to get those one-on-one situations. And I think that's what's going to look like in Brady's offense.
Let me ask you this, Blake. You teased me so much back when you first got your jerseys delivered. I loved it. You did that. We've seen some people on social media do it, but you had the beautiful, and yours was fantastic because it had all the sounds, the bubble wrap, the opening of the large envelope, and then you pull your jerseys. Now, I honestly at this point forgot, but we were having a talk with Peter was mentioning the other night, because Anthony Monday, the Buccaneers, if you didn't catch that show from Friday night with Anthony, he'll be again on next Friday. If you guys out there, especially you motherly type Buccaneer fans, go and look at this kid. I mean, he looks like he's 12 years old. He's not. He writes like a 24-year-old. He is 24 years old. But he wrote a nice series on the uniforms, starting back with the creamsicles and the OG, and then working his way up through, and Blake, of course, threw Johnny Dean and I under the bus. not so much threw us under the bus, but he goes, well, Tampa Bay Ray and Johnny Dean want the creamsicles. Now, don't get me wrong. It's like back when Josh Freeman and the Bucs, when they first wore those creamsicle, which by the way, they won that game. I think it was against the Green Bay Packers. But
it was
when
his first start.
Brought Bucko Bruce. It was his very first start, and it was Bucko Bruce and the creamsicles. I want to see them wear those once a year. Just once a year. Make it maybe it's an old NFC rival game, or maybe it's something on our division. Maybe it's a team that wants to wear their throwbacks and whatever. They have to plan it. But I'm all on board with these new uniforms. But the reason why I'm working it back to you is I had a quandary with my son this week. I'll get into it in a minute. But tell us the jerseys that I believe you got 2, didn't you?
Yeah. I got the pewter. Yeah, I got the pewter and I got the red one.
Right. And which numbers did you get? Did you get personalized or did you get players?
No, I got customized.
Yeah, I know you would, brother, because you wear it right. But see, my thing was that when the jerseys first came out, my family was still here, which now they're in North Carolina. But my first thing was we had Bucs Report. Peter Blake had a show. Peter Webb had a show one night, and he was talking about what number, which player, what number do you get? And my first thoughts were that I would get the 1976. Number for the original year the Buccaneers were incepted, 76, or not incepted, but the year they began play. And then for my son, I would have Kennedy put on the back, or his name. I thought it was cool. He definitely wants a jersey. It's got to be the pewter jersey. He wants that one. No, I'm not sure how. With the Buccaneers having 5 primetime games this year and a couple more late afternoon starts that could flex, I would think we see those pewter jerseys at least twice this year, if not 3 times, depending on if they win or lose. I don't think the NFL has a rule as to how many times they can wear those. But so I originally planned to get my son 76 for the year they were, or 08, because that's the year he was born, 2008. But it was going to be 76 with Kennedy. So I called him this week because I'm placing the order, and I said to him, all right, Tristan, I'm placing and I already knew the answer to this. Funny, before I asked it, that's the reason why I was asking him. I said, I'm ordering a jersey, and I just wanted to make sure on the number and the name on the back of it. And he was so, my son is such a great kid. He's so polite about it, but he goes, Dad. And before he even asked it, I just took a wild guess because it was what I was thinking. I said, you want a number 12 Brady, don't you? And he got ecstatic. He said, yes, that's what I want. And it's funny because 1 year or 2 years, 1 or 2 Super Bowls, whatever Tom Brady does here at the end of his career, it's not the sunset yet, but it's toward the twilight. Whatever he does, no matter what happens, the GOAT will always have been a Buccaneer, and he'll have that number 12 jersey. And it just made so much sense. And that's why I was asking my son that fact. And I was interested out there is I wonder what jersey sales are currently leading right now. I would probably put my money on him being Tom Brady, and I would probably put my money being on those Tom Brady pewter jerseys. What do you think?
Yeah, I believe Brady's top jersey in a couple colors. I believe it's the pewter, and then I believe it's the red, and then I agree with Gronkowski's up there too. And for rightfully so, people are going to see Tom Brady in New Jersey, kind of freaks them out, but it's cool. Change is always good. But yeah, Tom Brady's jersey is going to be one of the top selling jerseys, I believe, all this season.
Yeah, I even like the away jersey. I mean, they're all so tight. Like whenever I look at the New Jersey, it takes me for some reason, different imprints in our minds over the years. When I look at the new away jersey, which is welcome to the new, it's same as the old. I think of Riddell Anthony because he was the first one. I think Riddell was 85, I think, but I remember him wearing those away jerseys. When I think of the red jersey, the home red jersey, for some reason I think of Carl the Truth Williams or another receiver. I don't know why wide receivers. I don't. Maybe it's because you always see them running alone down the field and you look at them. But yeah, I thought the same thing with that thing. Now, before we end the show here, we're coming up on an hour. It goes fast, doesn't it, brother? I mean, when we're having a good chance to chat here, I'm just going to ask you this. I don't think either one happens because of the money. I mean, it's going to have to be a Jameis Winston, $1 million learn backup system to get either one of these two players in here. But if you had to choose, if the Buccaneers called Blake Anthony right now on the phone, I said, Blake, the money's the same both ways. Should we bring in McCoy or Devonta Freeman? Who would you take?
Both are very good at catching passes. One has more tread on the tires than other. Lachety is really dangerous in one-on-one situations. But I have to go with Freeman as far as durability. LaShawn's a little older; he's gotten injured a lot, but I have to go Freeman. But Freeman's made it very clear he'll sit out the year if he doesn't get the money he wants. So I have to go with Freeman.
Yeah, I felt the same way. As dangerous as Shady is coming on those very flare passes we're talking about, or the relief valves, and he's not that bad of a blocker. Although, as you stated, the fact that here as of late he's had so many injury, or he's been injury prone, if you will. He's getting a little older. There's more wear on the tires. So I wouldn't want to bring in McCoy and say, okay, leaving you in here because you're a good blocker, and then you're lightning on the outside for those relief valve passes. I hope that Dare does. You said Dare. Hopefully, he makes the team. Do you think that becomes a numbers to him? Because I thought last year, of course, if there are other better options for them, Dare, and I thought that some of the things he did last year pretty much gave him a leg up on making the team this year. Do you think there's a possible question there?
Dare's a good running back, and I still stand by that. He's very good. He was good at Wisconsin, and he can both catch passes and run the ball very well. Didn't get a whole lot of opportunities. Being with running the ball or catching the passes a lot, but you never know coming in camp. He was an undrafted player himself, so there's no guarantees year to year. Somebody could come out and show out and beat out, but you just don't know from year to year. You don't know who comes out and takes advantage of the opportunities that they get because they're playing hungry.
I thought it was stupid, and I'll say it. I hate to use the word stupid, but I'll say I thought it was a stupid report early on when Tom Brady was a free agent and the Buccaneers originally got on the screen, and they basically said, well, Tom Brady is going to get the keys to the Glazers' house, final decision, and all personnel, and he's going to be calling the plays. And I'm like, slow your roll here. This guy, I mean, has he earned the respect? You want this guy's input, not just because he's earned it, because it's genuinely good, but that running back position, I think the coaches are going to make the best decision for the team, and then especially for the team based around a Tom Brady quarterback. But that might be one of those situations where they do go to a veteran, the GOAT, Tom Brady, and they say, look, it's between him and this and that, and here's his strengths and weaknesses. And Tom Brady's not a Turk. He's not going to be the one who's office. He doesn't have an office at one Buck. He's not going to be the one that brings the players in uniform. They've been cut off the team, but obviously, with his 20 years of experience and the different running backs he played with in New England, he has specific styles and things he's looking for, and I'm thinking they probably mesh with what the Buccaneers are looking to do. So that's something that Tom Brady's input will probably be important about. Yeah, I had another thing for you. I wrote an article this week, and as always, I always say this to people that when you know this too, Blake, when we write our articles. We're breaking down film, we're doing research, and you inevitably learn so much about people. And I knew that Antoine Winfield Jr., coming out of University of Minnesota, Golden Gopher, coming to the Bucs in the second round, and we knew that his father had played defensive back in the NFL. Actually, was drafted by to Buffalo, I think it was, but he ends up spending 9 years in Minnesota, makes 3 Pro Bowls. He's in the all-time Metrodome team. He's in the top 50 Vikings all-time team. Great player. But I got the chance to really break it down and look into the history. Now, and I'm sharing this more for the people, for the Couple Ray watchers, but you probably knew all this, and it works back to your breaking down and what you do in breaking down game film. The fact that Antoine, when he was 2 years old, he was watching video of his father, Antoine Sr., watching video of him at his high school in Akron, Ohio, where he would end up going on to Ohio State, become a consensus All-American. He'd win the Dick Butkus Award his senior season. So at 2 years old, Antoine Winfield Jr. was already watching tapes. But then the story gets even better because Winfield Sr. says that as Winfield Jr. got older and was able to understand concepts and philosophies, basically his father was teaching him how to ferret out what an opponent's planned route is, or how to ferret out what the play is, how to cover a guy and where to watch and look. Remember, we were always told to watch their belly button, right? But so that was very interesting to me. And I did not realize all that back history until I really got into it. And if you guys didn't get a chance to read on Bucs Report, it was a story I published, I think it was on Monday or Tuesday, really interesting read. What do you think about Antoine Winfield? I mean, we've been seeing our secondary improve over the last couple of years, but does he come right in, literally, and make an instantly that ball hawk make a difference on this defense? And how do you think the rest of the defense will take to him?
I think he'll have his opportunities to be the starter on this team. They use the Buccaneers defense uses a lot of safety play. I think he's going to play down in the box a lot, covering tight ends, and they're going to use him to be rangy over top. That's the reason why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took him, because he offers both rangy in coverage and can coverage underneath backs, tight ends, etc., things like that, bigger receivers, bigger slot receivers, and things like that. But the way you separate yourself in the league is your ability to transition what you're learning on the screen to the field. You don't become great in the league just off of your basic skill set and being how fast you are and things like that. I think people have learned that just being fast isn't good enough to make it in this league. It's the way to interpret what your opponent is trying to do and take that away from them, i.e. New England. You take away their greatest strength and try to beat them to it and make them change their game plan to beat you. Does it always work? Nope. Sometimes your opponent gets the best of you. But that's what you try to do as a player. You understand, you're watching tape, you're watching small things in the tape, is that for some people show traits from game to game where you can get signals playing on defense in this particular thing, with playing on defense, learning what your opponent is trying to do and beat him to it. So with Antoine Winfield having a father, being as a great veteran in the league for a long time, you learn those traits, you learn how to study tape, you learn how to do those things from a guy like that. And as I said before, you transition it to your game, and that's how you move to another level when you come to the NFL level.
I like the story. It was told, it was part of the article, and I want to give props to the Pioneer Press, which is, they're out of Minneapolis or Minnesota, which of course, covers the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers. But I love the story, and I think it's how I ended my story, basically, is that the story of talking about, well, the article title was actually, I forget what the article title was, but basically the concept was he born for this? And so Antoine Winfield's a true freshman, right? It's his first game at University of Minnesota, and they're in Happy Valley, home of the Nittany Lions, Penn State, and there's 95,000 screaming fans there in Penn State. And here's this true freshman making his first start, and the Lawver, the defensive coordinator, I think now, I forget where he's coaching now, but he's on the sideline. And he tells this story that, usually you turn, you're over, and how players pump on each other. They hit each other's shoulder pads and pump helmets. And usually a coach will turn to a few players or all of them individually, and he'll give them a little inspirational, you're ready for this. Just remember your points. Get to your points. But the way he says it is he turns to Winfield Jr. right there again before 95,000 screaming Penn State fans, Nittany Lions, his first game as a freshman. And he just turns to him and he simply says, "You were born for this." And I love that because, you're talking about bloodlines, and his father having been an NFL athlete so well, and then watching the tapes and learning to break it down. And to this day, don't most of your players in the league now, they'll tell you that breaking down game tape and game film is one of the most important things they do from week to week, besides the physical stuff. And here's Winfield Jr. from the time he's 6, 7, 8, 10, 11 years old. He's bringing video. He's getting video of his dad, and his dad is showing him the tendencies of receivers. And look for that this year. I'm sure the Saints are already trying to figure out how the Todd Bowles defense is going to line up, because they want to get Michael Thomas on an island. But look for this year that ball hawk Winfield Jr. Look for him to be, if not covering or straight up trying to cover him, but look for him to be shadowing Michael Thomas on all of his routes, or Brandon Cooks, because Winfield is a ball hawk, and he will go after, even though you may have a one-on-one with Thomas. If you got Winfield free safety going side to side, and he knows which side Thomas is on, which generally we know is usually the side Drew Brees goes to, then you look for him to ball hawk on that. Did you want to put a couple of comments? Were there any comments or questions? Or
Johnny Dean
kind of going over our time a little bit.
Yeah, Johnny Dean just said what we were saying earlier. Winfield's one of the smartest rookies I think the Bucs has ever had as far as football knowledge goes. The ball always seems to find him. And again, and that goes from studying game tape to transitioning to playing on the field.
Yes. Well, Blake, before we cut out here, because we've already went over our time, Why don't you tell everyone here, tell all of our viewers here on Cup of Ray when they can catch the Sports Talk 49, the Blake Anthony show during the week.
Well, when the season comes on, it's going to be a consistent thing. It's going to be as it was last season, Mondays and Fridays. Mondays doing post game from the game Sunday, and then Fridays doing pre-games of what the opponent's going to do. But now I'm bouncing around a little bit, doing these Madden videos and doing articles and doing stuff like that. So I'm gonna try to jump on you guys' show. I'll be on Peter Blake's show Monday, talking with the sports web and Peter Blake, the Spider. I'll be up there, but you can find me on Twitter. I'm up there a lot on Blake Anthony. Yep, I'm on Blake Anthony 49 on Twitter. You can find me there and find all my stuff right here on Bucs Report.
Yeah, and we had the best times. That's the first time I met you. We were at Ferg's, and you and Peter were doing Blake and Blake Sports. And man, didn't we have some fun times out there? Uncle Mike. We remember the day we went straight from a press conference. We ran down. It was Gay Pride. In fact, it was 2 years ago this weekend or this week, or was it last year? That was Gay Pride weekend, and they had the parade going on, and we had some of the best. Yeah, and we had some of the best people coming on the show because our platform's open to any and all. Of course, some of our guests that day, Michael, if you remember, did not know a thing about. In fact, I'm not sure he knows that a football is an oblong-shaped football because he was. But we had some great times. I can't wait to. And you and I were talking about. I can't wait to get back to where we're doing that. And let's do this more often too, especially if people want to send comments and stuff like that. Loved having you here on Cup of Ray today, and thank you for hosting me through your studio there at Sports Talk 49. Really, everybody, before I'm going to let you go ahead. You go ahead and say how you want to end it first, Blake, and then I'll end it after you.
I guess check us all out Monday on the Sports Web, and you guys stay tuned. We try to give you all the content right here on Bucs Report as much as we can through this pandemic, much we threw against these protests and all that. Try to get your mind distracted off of what's going on in the world and politics and things like that. But sometimes we talk about politics here on Bucs Report because it's affecting sports now. So that's why we talk about it a little bit and why people, some people may not want to talk about it, but it's going to be brought up it's going to be brought up all season with players already admitting on